Ezra Levant for the RebelMedia. I'm standing outside the Old Bailey Central Criminal Courts in London shortly after Tommy Robinson was sentenced to prison for live streaming his political commentary on Facebook outside a rape gang trial last year in Leeds. This has been a very long procedure, 14 months back and forth in the courts. Tommy has already served 10 weeks in solitary confinement before that original conviction was quashed. This was a retrial, and yet he was convicted again and sentenced again. The long and the short of it is he was sentenced to a maximum of 9 months in prison. They reactivated an old 3-month suspended sentence, added to it a new 6-month sentence, and ordered that they be served consecutively. 9 months in prison for citizen journalism. But, as I mentioned, because he served some time improperly, he gets credit for that. There's other mathematics that apply. So in the end, the effective sentence will be 19 weeks in prison. And again, because there's a rule about early release, Tommy will be out in 9.5 weeks. So after all the math, Tommy Robinson will be in prison for 66 days. He was led out of the courtroom directly. He had a bag of his clothing and personal belongings. He was led out by security through a special stairwell, and as I speak, he is surely en route to a prison somewhere right now. I spoke to him briefly when the sentencing submissions were over, but we were waiting for the judges to come back in. He gave me his thoughts. He was remarkably calm. I think he was resolved. He's been to prison before, so the idea of spending a few months in prison more is less daunting to him than it would be for someone who's not been to prison before. He's also hopeful that it'll be a less punitive prison experience than before, that he'll have certain civil rights because he's a civil prisoner, not a criminal prisoner, and that means he has certain privileges that should be accorded. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. I think there's a real risk that the prison authorities will deliberately put him in a dangerous position, either to have him killed by prison gangs, which are dominated by the Muslim prison gangs, or alternatively, that he'll have to go in this tiny box of solitary confinement for 23.5 hours a day, as he was last time. So that's how he seemed to me when I saw him in court. Calm, resolved. Resigned is probably too big a word. Looking forward to getting out, I think, is more accurate. And he gave me some notes that he asked me to say to people. And I gave a short speech, very short speech of Tommy's remarks to a small crowd that was here. The bulk of the crowd that was outside the court has marched to Parliament Hill. But there were a few folks here who were remaining for some word. Here's a short excerpt from the short speech I gave of Tommy Robinson's words that he asked me to tell people. Take a look. So this is from Tommy Robinson to his supporters. And I'll look in the camera because I think his supporters, not just you folks here who are remaining, but everywhere, will be interested. So Tommy said, "I have been sentenced to 9 months in prison. That has been reduced because of the months I have already improperly served in solitary confinement. I will serve more than 2 more months of guaranteed solitary confinement. None of this was decided by a jury because a jury would not convict me of journalism. A jury of British men and women would be outraged by the widespread rape of our girls, not by the person who is reporting on the widespread rape of our girls. And that is what I have been sent to prison for, not for inciting vigilantism and not for disrupting any trial. They weren't disrupted. I have been sent to prison for exposing a crisis in our country that the police and the judges and the media all know about, but all prefer not to talk about out of political correctness. But if the establishment thinks this will stop me, they are sorely mistaken. Unless I'm killed in prison, which may be their real goal, I will be back soon with a renewed commitment to telling the stories that the mainstream media won't tell and that the police and the courts will do nothing about. I see that in the United States, a politically corrected millionaire named Jeffrey Epstein has finally been charged with raping young girls. No one ever thought he would be charged because he's so politically powerful, but he was. That's a justice system that works. If he were in the UK, the journalists who exposed him would be the ones going to jail. That's what happens in a country without freedom of the press. Thank you for your support, and don't forget about me in prison. I promise I will be back, and I promise we won't rest until the rape of our children is stopped. So that's Tommy's message that he asked me to deliver because he had to be taken straight away and he could not come out. Well, I think that I was worried this morning that the reaction would be brutal violence, and it's obvious the police were worried about that too. They had riot gear, long truncheons, body armor. They took special steps, even with the metal gates. They were all joined together with plastic bands. They were ready for violence. I spoke to one cop when I came out, and I said, "Oh, I'm glad nothing got violent." He said, "What? We had coffee thrown at us," and he showed me that was true. I told him I regretted that, and that was inappropriate, but it was better than I had feared. I thought it would have been a more widespread riot. Looks like they're shutting down the gates right now. So that's my report from the Old Bailey. Not really a surprise. I was a little bit surprised, I should tell you, that Tommy Robinson was convicted. The case against him was so weak because, of course, his comments 14 months ago did not disrupt any trial, so why would he still be hunted by the prosecutor for 14 months? Well, obviously he's a political problem, and now the solution is to throw him in jail. I get the feeling, though, he'll be out in 2 months bigger than ever because he's becoming a bit of a free speech martyr and, frankly, a bit of an embarrassment to the United Kingdom that is treating their political dissidents, well, a little bit too much like how Vladimir Putin or Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela treats theirs. I've got a number of reports on this subject. You can see them all at realreporters.uk, and if you feel so moved, I'd be grateful if you help chip in to help cover my flights. This is, the 10th time I've come over from Canada to report on Tommy's travails. Until next time, on behalf of all of us at The Rebel, keep fighting for freedom. I'm here in the UK to report on Tommy's sentencing hearing. He's been sent back to prison for months for the crime of committing journalism. To see all my reports and to help contribute to my travel costs, please go to realreporters.uk.